All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our live stream today. We got a lot of interesting conversations to kind of get into. We're going to be talking about collaborative problem solving, one of, I would say, your expertise.
Yes.
And so I'm really excited about that. And if you are watching, comment below. Let us know where you're watching from.
Who's the farthest person away?
Yes.
Do we have anybody outside of Ohio? Outside of West Virginia?
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
Okay, so before we get started, Doug, we're going to ask the audience to participate as well, but these are questions also for us, some icebreakers. And so our first question that we're going to ask is have you ever met anyone famous?
Well, yes, I've met famous people.
People? Wow, more than one.
Yeah. Because, of course. No, so only really hockey fans would probably know this person, but Gordie Howe, who is like the greatest hockey player of all time, lived in my hometown, and he had a restaurant. And so he was eating dinner with his friend Otto Graham, who's a famous football player for, I think, played for the Browns. And I was like a tiny little kid and went up and met him. So I've met a lot of hockey players through hockey camps and things like that. I'm trying to think of like a famous... Ooh, I mowed Gail King, who's Oprah's best friend. I mowed her lawn for this company I worked with. I never met her, but I was able to get into her private gate and answer her.
Okay.
Oh, someone's met Jay Cutler.
Yeah, Jordan put down, I don't know who Jay Cutler is.
Football player.
Football
for
player?
The Bears, and married like, someone from the OC. The reality show.
Oh, okay, the OC.
See, I'm up to speed on my...
Wow, I did not know that.
Yes. I'm trying to think who else I've met that's famous. They've really been athletes.
Well, as you're thinking, I've met Pitbull before.
Really?
Years ago. I wish I had a picture to throw up here, but we were in Atlantic City. We were at a... kind of like it was in an amphitheater, really small, and I was outside with my, I don't know who I was outside with, maybe my dad or my cousin, and I remember there was these big bodyguards like walking, and right behind there was this bald guy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is that Pitbull? And it was Pitbull.
Yeah.
And he's so short. That's one thing I remember about him. He is very short.
Pitbulls are kind of short. They're not very tall dogs, so that makes sense. I met everybody but Jacob Dylan on the Wallflowers at a concert.
Oh, what's the popular song they have, Wallflowers?
I have no idea. It's been so long.
Oh, man. They have one really good song.
You're asking me too quick. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyone else that's watching, let us know. Have you ever met anyone famous?
Well, and then the other thing would be, in my world, the person we did a podcast with, that hasn't gone out yet, Tim Anderson.
Oh, okay.
He feels famous to me because he's got like multiple books and famous with original strength. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
I could tell that you were very excited about that podcast.
Pumped. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So next one, again, if you guys are watching, comment below. What's one place you have no interest in traveling? I mean, Antarctica. I wouldn't really want to go to Antarctica.
You know, we almost went to Alaska on our honeymoon, and I don't know if I'd be really into Alaska. So Tracy's asking, who do you consider famous? You know what? You go for whatever you think is famous, whatever falls in your definition. But I would say somebody that other people would probably know.
Well known.
Doesn't have to be everybody, but like, you know, it's got to be some China.
Tracy says China. Yeah.
Yeah, North Korea. I don't know.
Tracy, would you want to see the Great Wall of China though? I think that would be kind of cool to see. Kaylee says anywhere cold.
Yeah. You know, but going to the beach has grown on me, but I used to not really enjoy the beach.
Oh.
But now I'm starting to,
Yeah.
because we have kids, and so now we go to the
That's
beach.
what I was going to ask, yeah, because you have kids now.
But
Anyone else, where would you not want to visit? Tracy said that would be cool. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I would say Antarctica. I'm trying to think of some other places I wouldn't want to go. Anywhere. Okay. So, Australia, they have these, like,
anywhere
spider
with snakes
things.
or spiders.
Snakes and spiders. They have these, I can't remember what they're called, but they're massive spiders. I couldn't do it. And then there was the guy that plays Chris Hemsworth that plays Thor.
Yeah.
There's like a video of him in his house, and he's one of these got back in. He picks it up. It's a huge crab spider, and just puts it outside and it walks away. And I couldn't do it, guys. I couldn't do it.
That's yeah.
I hate cold, but wouldn't mind visiting Alaska. Have you ever been to Alaska?
I have not.
No.
No.
Or is there a lot of hockey stuff that goes on in Alaska?
Mystery Alaska, one of the best hockey movies out there. So
Okay.
I ask you, go watch it.
There you go.
Those are ones I think where, like, if you see like videos of people like just skating on the river, it's like frozen, you know, and you could just
Yeah.
that's like a dream of mine to just
Oh, yeah.
skate on this never ending
Yeah.
water, you know, like that would be cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Our next question before we move on to our topic is, again, if you're watching, let us know what activity helps you relieve stress. So, Doug, I'll let you start off with that. What activity helps you relieve stress?
Playing hockey. So anytime I get to do that, which I haven't been able to do in a really long time, so I'm more stressed nowadays. So that would be one. It usually has to be something physical. So working out, playing hockey. I'd rather play hockey on the ice than floor hockey, but floor hockey is a good second.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you play hockey around here if you don't have like an...
You have
it
to
would be
travel.
floor.
Like the closest place would be Athens.
Yep,
at
Athens
at
has-
OU, but see, they're not a year-round rink, and then it's just not. And then Charleston would be the next one. But like like when I lived in Cincinnati, and I probably talked about this, there's literally like there was a area of town. There was 2 rinks. One had 2 rinks in it. There was a complex that had 2 ice rinks, and then a rink about a mile down the road. So I like literally was playing like 3 times a week.
Wow.
So it was super fun.
Dustin Richards, thank you for commenting and watching the live stream.
What
He
kind of
says-
music, Dustin?
Yeah, what kind of music and workout?
And then Tracy, are you running and playing the piano at the same time, or doing those separately?
Running and piano, yes. I can see, Tracy, used to play guitar a lot, and I would, I'm electric guitar, and I would sit and play, and it was very comforting for me to play to popular music that I really like. And so let me know if that's your same experience as far as sitting down, just playing the piano, playing songs. What kind of songs do you like to play on piano?
And my guilty pleasure would be eating pizza. So
Oh my gosh, I love pizza. There was a Jerry Seinfeld has a quote. He's like, "There's happy, and then there's pizza happy." And I'm like, "Yes,
There's definitely pizza.
absolutely."
It is the one meal where like I never feel guilty about the amount of slices I eat. 80s music, old school country.
Yeah. Dustin, what's interesting about 80s music and like old school country is like Florida Georgia Line and those guys in the 80s, that's kind of like where the new country kind of went in the 90s and early 2000s. So yeah, definitely old school country as well. I always say I was born in the wrong decade, Doug. There's so many people I would have loved to see in the 80s.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi, U2, AC/DC.
It was a good time.
Man, I'm jealous.
The world was a better place.
How old were you in the 80s?
Well, I was born in 74, so I was at least 6. So
There you go.
6 to, what's that, 16?
Yeah.
So my formative years.
Okay. Oh my gosh. So jealous. All right. So Tracy says, thank you for commenting. I play praise and worship classical. My go-to when I feel sad or feeling down is Right Here Waiting. Oh, I love classical.
Journey. Man.
Yes. Dustin says Journey.
Yeah.
Man, Journey has some
I was
good.
on a Journey kick for a little while.
Yeah.
But it went away.
Dustin, do you like to listen to, what is it, Separate Ways?
So
That's a good rock and roll song.
no one really knows, but there's been multiple lead singers in Journey. I've
Yes.
always thought for the longest time it was just the same guy, and now there's an Asian guy that's
And they got him from YouTube. They found him on YouTube doing
Singing
covers.
his
of-
song. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah,
All right, guys.
which he
let's-
sounds exactly like him. It's like blows
He does.
my mind.
He does. That's the beauty of like. There's also a website too of like doppelgangers, where like you're identical person that looks like you,
Yeah.
and there's like a website where you can kind of go in and people find their doppelganger. Is that how you say it, doppelganger?
Yeah, don't stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never stop believing, Dustin.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, thank you guys for commenting. We're going to kind of get into today. And so we're going to be talking about, and some other things as well, we're going to be talking about collaborative problem solving.
That's a
And
mouthful.
so what I got from their website, Think Kids, which is what you guys use. So one of right on their front page was kids with challenging behavior are tragically misunderstood. It's time for more compassionate and effective approach. So before you start, Doug, collaborative problem solving isn't just for kids. It can be applied to adults as well.
Yeah, no, and actually there's research of its use in multiple settings. So if anybody remembers the movie about the psychiatric hospital in Oregon, where Jack Nicholson, Here's Johnny, kind of where he breaks his head through the door. I can't remember the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's actually a real psychiatric facility, and that facility that's famous for that movie uses collaborative problem solving with their clients. So with the patients, so they use it with adults. It is used. They did a big project with school resource officers in New York City. So like 5,000 school resource officers using this model, which is really interesting, because if you think of it, like police officers would have a very like consequence oriented approach to challenging behavior. For them to use this model that is flies in the face of conventional wisdom, is really interesting. So
Yeah.
it's also it actually has its roots in parenting. So collaborative problem solving is used much.
So that's
with
kind of where it
parents.
was birthed out of. Like there was a need.
Yeah, so they would, parents would come into the hospital where it originated, and it originated, years ago, and it just keeps evolving from there. And there's just a big network of people
Yeah.
out of Think Kids that really pioneers this, pretty impressive model. So
Yeah. So Tracy and Dustin, if they're still watching, and other people that are watching, why should people care about collaborative problem solving? How could it help them?
Well, I mean, I think if you're looking for a way to engage people in collaborative ways to work through problems, I mean, ultimately, for me, I find that the traditional ways of trying to deal with challenging behavior is very exhausting. It is a lot of work on the adult, parent or staff or whatever. And can be and it is also more likely to lead to lots of conflict, cycle, power struggles, and high incident issues. So like restraints and things like that. I just think it provides a more compassionate and understanding of challenging behavior. And the kids that display those challenging behaviors. And if people haven't recognized this about me since the many sessions or episodes we've done, sessions, I'm always looking for understanding of people. So like if it's better to look at trying to understand why behavior is happening, not to just react to it and tell them that it's wrong. How can we make problem behaviors teachable moments? How can we take these events and these experiences and learn from them? So
Doug, just getting right into it is one of the quotes that you have said a lot, and kind of the mantra of collaborative problem solving that they've used is kids do well if they can, not if they want to. So explain a little bit of that. Kids do well if they can.
So we first, if we were to look into training, we first look at how we view challenging behavior. In the conventional wisdom is that kids are do well if they want to, which is the idea that they are choosing to behave a certain way. They are choosing to do these challenging behaviors. And so the conventional response to that is typically operant approaches, which is, rewards and punishments. If we believe that kids only behaving because they want to, then we have to spend a lot of our efforts trying to make kids want to. And just there's just so much evidence that shows that rewards and punishments don't work for the very kids that need these programs the most. And these are kids that in all the 50 years of research that we've done in the neurosciences and in other areas that, kids lack skills. They lack the skills that we think are necessary to meet these expectations, and that kids are not all the same. And you can ask anybody, like, in a teachers in a classroom, like, are all kids as capable as everyone else? Like, in terms of, do they all have the same skill sets and abilities and things to meet this certain expectations? And they'll easily say no, but we apply this idea that they should be, and so kids do what they can, is this idea that, kids do well if they have the ability, if they have the skills. And so if they are not doing well, then something is getting in the way. And our job as adults or as helpers is to figure out what's getting in the way. And typically we break it down into some neurocognitive thinking skills. So like language and communication, a kid's ability or a person's ability to express what they think and feel, or to understand communication, to have abilities to understand what they're hearing from people. Attention and working memory. So gosh, man, my wife would definitely say that I have poor attention working memory skills. So I'll forget to bring something home from work, or go stop and do something. So those are attention and working memory skills that sometimes lead to challenging behavior. Not turning homework in, not being to places on time, not all these types of things. Emotional and self-regulation skills. My ability to control my emotions, my ability to handle negative emotions, my ability to control my arousal level. So if I'm really excited and I can't control my behavior, can't control myself, then that requires skill. Cognitive flexibility. Man, do a lot of people struggle with this. The ability to think flexibly, to see the gray in situations, to handle multiple ideas, to move away from black and white. And then finally, the last category we look at is social thinking. So understanding how our behavior affects others, being able to recognize how I make things worse for myself, just understanding the social ramifications of my actions. So I just find we feel like looking at kids do well if they want to limits our approaches to helping that student, because all you're doing is spending time to make kids want to, and that spends a lot of effort. That spends a lot of money to try to come up with as many rewards as you can and all these types of things. But you can accomplish a lot more when you work with the mindset of kids do well if they want to.
Yeah.
And even Tracy, who is I know as an adult, I know who she is saying that I struggled. She's struggled with flexibility. We've all struggled with flexibility, especially in moments of high stress. So the more stressed and the more aroused we get dealing with kind of what's going on in the world, the more inflexible we become. Perfect example. What everybody struggled to recognize, like, think about like the inflexibility of COVID, the impact of COVID, and all the adults that are either all never wear masks or everybody has to wear masks, and all, we just kind of break it into these black and white categories. And, we just start to thinking like, oh, maybe there's reason why I should maybe wear a mask. I know it's, I don't believe in it, but maybe other people do, and maybe it'd be respectful to other people, So there's different, that requires flexibility in my thinking. I have to see other people's ideas and be able to kind of recognize that there are multiple viewpoints and perspectives that I should, pay attention to. So
yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to get into some other things here, Doug. So I have some questions that I want to ask you about that could pertain to collaborative problem solving. So this is our Ask a Therapist, some questions that we've gotten. Do you believe children have the right to tell you no?
So me personally, or just to say no in general?
General.
Yes. So, and I'll give you an example of why this is. If we tell kids that you have no right to say no, then you are creating a vulnerability to abuse. Because what do we tell kids if a stranger comes up to them and they want to get in the car? You say no, right? But if you're not allowed to say no to adults, then, you know, so here's the thing. They can say no, but that doesn't mean that that's where that ends. Doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation with the kid going, okay, tell me about why you're saying no. Like, tell me what's going on with you not wanting to do this activity or whatever I've asked you to do. Because maybe there might be a good reason for why they're saying no.
Yeah.
And then we can solve that problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have a quote here, Doug, that I found on Instagram. It says, the most important social skill a child needs is to learn how to self-advocate. This includes saying no.
So this also goes back to the first thing where you talk about we talk about cognitive flexibility. You have to understand that giving kids the right to say no doesn't mean that you're just letting them run havoc all over the world. Like, doesn't mean that you're like excusing all their disruptive behavior or that you don't address anything, that you just let them wreak havoc. No, it is just you're giving them the right to say no without retribution or punishment or, you know, vengeful acts or, but you're giving them the opportunity to express themselves. And if we just encourage robotic compliance, then we are not building skills like language and communication.
Yeah.
You know, being able to kind of express why they're saying no and why they don't want to do this activity in this moment. Because sometimes it might even just be as simple as there's something that they feel is more pressing in that moment, but they still will come back to that activity. Or there might be like, you know, that, I don't know, there's just, we have to give kids the opportunity to express themselves and encourage that.
Do you have any personal examples? So you have 3 daughters, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, yes, I have $3. Personal examples. Well, first of all, I think my kids are more likely to say no when they're in a state of dysregulation. So they're hungry, tired, they're just in a bad mood in general. So they're just dysregulated. So the idea that I'm going to try to, sometimes they're saying no, but they don't know any other way to tell me that they're hungry or they're upset about something or something else is on their mind that they're having a hard time, you know, dealing with.
Yeah.
And so typically that's usually when my kids say no, is when they are in a dysregulated state of some sort.
So let's kind of go into collaborative problem solving. So let's say with one of your kids, when they say no, or you're trying to get them to do something, they're dysregulated. How do you collaborate with them in that moment? So if one of them's saying, no, I'm not doing it, and you're trying to get them to do something important, what would be an approach that you would do?
So so in collaborative problem solving, we have 3 options to handle challenging behavior. One is plan A, where me as the adult imposes my will. So I am only concerned about my expectations. I just want you to do something. I don't really care about your concerns. I just want you to meet my expectations. That is certainly, we think, is not the most effective way of dealing with challenging behavior. But sometimes there are times when we have to use plan A. So it is not a all or nothing. There are going to be times when we say plan A. If my kid goes out and is an hour and a half late, comes back hour and a half late from curfew, then yeah, I'm probably going to plan A and not let her go out the next day, you know, or over a friend's house until we work some things out.
Yeah.
Plan C is where we would drop the expectation temporarily. Doesn't mean that we just abandon this expectation, but we are dropping the expectation temporarily because we have bigger fish to fry. There are more important things that we need to address and focus on, and maybe trying to force a kid to do something is going to lead to unsafe behavior, more challenging behavior. So getting to plan B is our third option, which is where we try to get both concerns on the table. The kid's concern, like what's getting in the way of them doing what we've asked them to do, and then our concern about why we think it's important for them to do that. So now, in that situation where, okay, I ask my kid to clean up their room and they say no, that is what we would end up calling emergency plan B, because it's happening in the middle of the problem. So we would kind of encourage not trying to solve problems in the middle of the problem, but because that's typically where we kind of get into we're more dysregulated and things like that. But ultimately I would listen.
Yeah.
So I would use listening skills and try to gain the kid's concern.
Yeah.
You know, so something along the lines of, okay, so you're not wanting to do this, you know, this whatever I've asked them to do. And then if, you know, and so they say, yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about why you don't want to do that? Because I can see that this is really, you know, important to you of not wanting to do this. What's going on? I'm sure you have a really good reason for it.
Because it's not just that your kid's sole thinking is, I want to disrespect my dad and make his life really hard right now.
Right. I mean, so why would my kid want to do that? Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and most of us can reflect on a time that we've behaved in an inappropriate way, or, you know, disrupted something. You know, we weren't going, ooh, I am, you know, Dr. Evil and I want to go, you know, disrupt and make my dad mad and do all these things. And, you know, any times my kids have had disruptive behavior, they've never done it on purpose.
Yeah.
They've just struggled.
Had this skill, not the will.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll, you know, and I think, you know, there's it is also, you know, I just think it's in any of those situations, whether I believe, you know, I need to know what's behind all this, what's getting in the way. Because here's the deal. There's going to be a day where my kid says no, and there's going to be days when my kid says yes. So what's different? You know, what's different on the day that they say no than on the day that they said yes?
That's true. Yeah.
You know, so they don't say no all the time. There are certain situations and predictable times when they say no. And so we have to solve those problems.
Well, there could be also times too that I think that, let's say it's the same situation, and one day your kid says no, and then the next day they say yes, so they are more willing and they collaborate better. Would it even be good to ask them a question as in, you know, why today are you more willing to do that?
Yeah, I mean, usually often you're having that conversation in the reverse, but you certainly could do that. Like when they're saying no, it's like, you know, yesterday you jumped right on it and wanted to help me out here, but today you're not. What's going on?
Yeah.
You know, something must be up, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, whenever you're trying to address something with a kid, with anybody, and when you think about yourself as like, if you ever had a job and your boss wants to talk to you, you're going to get dysregulated. There's a power differential there. And so it's going to put you on edge. And so you have to create a situation where I'm going to be more willing to talk about these things, you know? And so if I come at you with, you do it or else, it's not going to help me feel safe to talk about it. And so we end up discouraging kids from expressing themselves and talking about what's bothering them and stuff.
Yeah, because I even think too, how many people watching the chat have not liked it when they're trying to explain something to someone else, your boss, your significant other, and they aren't listening to you? How frustrating is that? Imagine a little kid that's like, you know, the dad or the mom's not listening to them, the caretaker's not listening to them, and they have less control over some of the things that they're doing.
Right.
And so,
well, and on the flip side, as a parent, whenever I've tried to plan A my kids, and yes, I've tried to plan A my kids, I've never enjoyed that interaction. You know, my any of those interactions, any of the ways we've addressed problems have always been more rewarding for me and enjoyable for me when we collaborate and talk through things.
Yeah. Well, something else that I have, Doug, that I found on Instagram as well. And so here's kind of the reaction quotes that we've done in the past. So here's a quote: thinking of a child behaving badly disposes you to think of a punishment. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so I think that goes into lines of when we talk about where the mindset is huge. So our mindset about how we view challenging behavior really determines how we're going to respond. So if I believe that kids do well if they want to, then that's gonna encourage me unconsciously most of the time to employ some type of reward or punishment. So we use kids do well if they can as our anchor. So it's our anchor mantra to kind of put us in the mindset to be more understanding and compassionate, to know, hey, there's a lagging skill going on here. There's some problem that's really challenging for this kid. So we're going to try to learn more about it. And we're going to collaborate. So in terms of that quote, if you see them just being bad, that's another way of saying he is wanting to be bad, right? And so that goes with the kids do well if they want to. So yes, you're trying to convince them to not want to be bad, right? I'm going to employ some punishment, and it's going to just basically put us in that type of mindset.
Yeah, and then so on the opposite of that, Doug, I also found it's part of the same quote, but I wanted to separate them. So let me find it here. So here's another quote. Think of a child as someone who is struggling, and it encourages you to help, or to help them.
Right. I'm trying to think of the quote. And my co-trainer that I always train with, Ted, I wish he was here right now because he would know it. There's a quote along the lines of thinking he's not giving me a hard time, he's having a hard time. So if we can see that, if we can look at the problem as the kid is having a hard time, that's much more helpful for me as a parent or as a helper or whatever, versus he's giving me a hard time. Yeah. So oftentimes we look, when we're in that plan A mode or kids do well, he is giving me a hard time. He is trying to make my life miserable and, and so that, when I think I'm being attacked in terms of that, then I am going to attack back, right? So tit for tat. Our brain reacts in tit for tat ways. That's our natural response because our brain's about survival. So if we feel threatened by people, we are going to, you give me friendly, I'll give you friendly back. If you give me anger, I'll give you anger back. And so that is our robot mind. That's our automatic pilot where we give what people give to us. And so we have to be able to stay in our own self and control so that we're just not mirroring back their behavior. We want them to mirror our calm, not us mirroring their anger.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. This goes into the next quote, Doug. I really like this one. So this is probably more for adults. People who can't communicate think everything is an argument.
Okay, yeah. It's a lagging skill, right? So if I'm always... So it would also... The language and communication is also about how we receive information, like communication. So it's not just about us being able to communicate, but are we listening to what people are telling us and understanding their perspective? Or is our filters getting in the way? So, we
even biases
and which happens, but so like oftentimes, and I see this when we work with staff and especially when I was in my residential days, I have this belief and theory about why something's happening, why a kid's acting that way. And so it's hard for me. So everything gets filtered through my theory. So instead of taking kind of a blind slate and saying, okay, I'm just going to put my biases aside and try to really understand your perspective, anything that counters my theory, I shut down, right? So no, that's not why you did it, and that happens all the times because I want it to be this way. So then I can deliver my intervention the way I see it in my mind. So
when you've also said too about the brain isn't looking for a perfect match. It's just looking for something that's familiar. So if you're in a situation where it's kind of similar to another situation, you're kind of go to that theory of saying they're doing this to make me upset. They're doing this because they think I'm stupid. Like all these things that go through your brain. Yeah. So what are some ways that you've seen professionally or things that maybe even you try yourself to kind of catch that automatic thinking and slow it down and say, well, wait a minute, what if that's just my brain looking for something that's familiar?
I mean, I go back to mindset. So if I can believe that people are doing the best that they can and something's getting in the way, then I'm going to be more out of my own head, right? So I will be, if I don't think that it's on purpose, then I won't, if I don't misunderstand their intention and I just, take it from I need to understand what you're, if I am respectfully curious, if I take that mindset, then I will be able to kind of avoid my biases getting in the way.
Because like when I'm dysregulated, like even being in the car, it's like when someone cuts me off, it's like I think like they did that on purpose.
Right.
But no, really, it's they might not have seen me.
And that's the first step. And in any, and we've done a lot of crisis intervention trainings and things like that. But in any crisis intervention, the very first thing you have to do in entering into a crisis is to be regulated yourself. So if you are dysregulated, mad, angry, do not go try to, because an angry adult, a dysregulated adult can never regulate a dysregulated kid. So if you want any chance of regulating a dysregulated kid, you need to be regulated yourself.
And when you say regulated, you mean calm?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, very good. Let's see. What's the next one that we can go to here? So here's another good quote, Doug. I want to get your reaction to. Children must be taught how to think, not what to think. Do you think that quote's a little maybe extreme too? Are there appropriate times to tell kids what to think, or should we always look in the lens of how to think about something?
So I think it's more, I agree with that. I agree with that statement. I think, and I don't want people to kind of misunderstand that we're not saying that you shouldn't instill values. Hi, Janice. She signed in from YouTube. I don't want people to misunderstand that, like, we're not saying instill values, but you can kind of help people learn how to think critically, like, okay, if like running scenarios through your head, if I, tell my teacher to F off, how's that going to play out? Like, is that going to end well for me? Like, is that going to work well? Like, if you could, so like sometimes it's like your kid might say, I want to do this. And you don't really think that that's going to end well. Instead of saying that's not going to end well, say, how do you think that's going to go? Like, how do you think so-and-so will react to that if you're doing that? What do you think some possible responses might be? And let them kind of get the light bulb.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Anytime someone has told you, you know what, and people have said this, anytime someone has said, you're not going to be able to do that. Oftentimes you get the opposite reaction. I'm going to do it. You can't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so it just motivates people to kind of, do that. So,
yeah. Janice has a good quote here. Critical thinking is a skill, not an innate ability humans are born with.
Right. And so our cortex, which is responsible for our critical thinking, number one, it is developmentally not something you just walk out of the womb. Hopefully no one's walking out, but come out of the womb critically thinking. We're not even thinking. It is strictly reflexive and stuff like. And so that our ability to think comes from our experience, and it comes from the way we parent our kids. It just is our experiences. And then it comes from the way our teachers treat us in school and the way our peers treat us. We start learning how to think based on our experiences in life. And our brain, our cortex doesn't fully mature until our late 20s. So we have lots of training to do in terms of how to think.
Yeah.
And so we just can't assume that kids just know how to think the right way.
Yeah, there's a book that I'm reading on emotional trauma from childhood, and there was a really good story from a child and a mother, and how the child interacted with her kid in a moment where he was at school and he got in trouble for not standing in line for when recess was over. And so the teacher came over and had said something to the kid saying, hey, he had a pencil too, and he said, hey, put that pencil away. And the kid, she like gave him an instruction, and the kid responded with, do you think I'm dumb? I'm not holding it like this. I can't poke myself. Like, the kid responded that way, and he got in trouble. And so when the kid came back, his mom explained to him, saying things like, giving him language of what he felt in that moment, that, hey, I know that when people older than you, because of your siblings, they don't listen to you. You feel like you're not being heard in those moments. But what all your teacher was wanting from you is she just wanted you to behave in that moment because she needed to get everyone inside. She doesn't think that you're dumb.
So
kind of helping him understand.
That is a result of us just having rules or expectations with no reasoning behind it. Or no reason. Like, so one of the things we say is, okay, if you're going to address a kid for a problem, you better know what your concern is. Like, why are you concerned about this? Because if you don't have a good reason for it, then why are you trying to enforce this expectation? So what is your reasoning? And we typically in collaborative problem solving talk about 4 things that that our reasoning or our concern should be about: health, safety, learning, and impact on others. And so if we're having an expectation, it should be around one of those things. So then, you know, most of the time, kids will respond when they understand why you want them to do something. But we typically leave that part out. We don't ask them. We don't tell them why we want them to that to happen. And so that often is the issue. But we get in trouble because that kid doesn't even understand why he's being addressed for something.
Yeah, and he's using his experiences with his older siblings where people don't, he's the youngest, people don't always listen to him, and he's trying to explain, I know I'm not doing this on purpose to hurt myself, or I know he kind of feels like he's dumb. And I just like how that story, his mom interacted with the kid was also too, is like, you know, her telling him, sweetheart, I need you, when there's an adult telling you to do something, I need you to listen to them. And that if you have problems, you can always talk to daddy and mommy about it.
Right.
Like,
right.
I think he was at definitely a younger age in elementary school.
Sure.
And so that also
Which is even more important. It's like, okay, in those formative years when they're developing and learning how to navigate this world. And I'll tell you, man, I how many rules are in a school?
A lot.
Right? I mean, I know when I worked residential, like there was, every time someone acted up or did something that we didn't see before, it was like, all right, there's a new rule, you know? And man, it's like, it's so hard to keep track of the rules, you know? And then I also question, I mean, how many people out there really enjoy all rules? Like there's rules that I know people do not follow.
Yeah.
You know, if people enjoyed rules or followed rules, then we would have everybody driving the speed limit at all times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, people only follow the rules that make sense to them. They don't follow rules that don't make sense to them.
Yeah.
If you feel like a rule is against your integrity, or
you think it's
they think it's stupid,
reasonable,
they don't follow it. They might if they have the skills enough to kind of like, you know, get through it, but they're not going to necessarily, you know, enjoy it or think that that's what's, you know, they're doing it because they don't want to get in trouble, or that they, you know, they're going to, you should have good reasons for your expectations.
Yeah. Well, Janice says here, because I said so is the worst possible response from an adult when you need a child's behavior to change. No real opportunity for learning.
Yeah.
So that's probably something else that thank you, Janice, for commenting that. Something else like with kids is that looking at things for an opportunity to learn.
Teachable moments, one of my favorite terms, is that, you know, problems are opportunity. And I think, you know, one of the things that I think is a problem is that we miss out on so many teachable moments because we don't take time to address those problems. Like, we can teach so much through problems, more so than, you know, like, than not, you know, just trying to like motivate, you know, that people can learn so much through that. And I just think they're wasted opportunities. So I try to get people to not be afraid of challenging behavior, because those are opportunities. Yeah. So, you know, take those opportunities to teach.
Well, here's something that's very interesting, Doug, and I want to get your response to this. Another quote that I found on Instagram. It said, well-behaved children are not self-regulated, they are afraid.
I don't know. And I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, there is an element of what we would call robotic compliance. So like as we get, and this is more a neurosequential model, Dr. Bruce Perry work, we talk about state-dependent functioning. So everything we do is state-dependent. And our stress response has two kind of roads we go down. One is hyperarousal, where we're more reactive and disruptive and behaviorally challenging. And dissociative, where we really check out, we psychologically check out. It's more of an turning inward. And so there's an element in a state of alarm, when we're in a state of alarm where we go through this robotic compliance, where what that quote is saying happens. My issue would be many well-behaved children are not self-regulated. They're afraid. I would disagree with that, but I would say that is probably, there are definitely situations where kids are behaving out of this robotic compliance. They are in a state of alarm based on the stress of that moment with the adult, or whatever. But I would want to gloss over that we have all these kids in the world that are just full of fear in those situations. But I do think that is definitely happens. And so when we're working with people, it's all about getting kids regulated, so then we can have real conversations, and we can get kids to, and we also talk in collaborative problem solving about the difference between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation is I'm only doing something based on external rewards or external factors. Intrinsic is I am behaving or functioning because of internal drive. And so internal drive is, I would rather kids behave because they are internally motivated. They see the benefit themselves in behaving and meeting these expectations in the way that they are doing. But many of our programs, many of our behavior management systems, classroom management systems are really extrinsically motivated. And so the problem with extrinsic motivation is when that extrinsic is removed, they still don't have the skill to meet that expectation. So we talk about Daniel Pink. Anybody who's interested in motivation and learning about motivation, he writes a book called Drive and other books that are about motivation. He says there are three things that help us be intrinsic in motivation. One is connection. So we're connected. We're connected to the environment we're in. Relationships. We feel a sense of belonging. Things like that. That we're more likely to be motivated internally when we feel safe with the relationships that we have in our environment. Competence, which is we have the skills to do what we need to do in that environment. So it's hard for me to be intrinsically motivated when I don't have the skills to have success, right? When I continue, think about it. If I could never make a basket and no one's there to teach me how to make a basket, then I'm gonna stop playing basketball.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And then autonomy. I'm given the opportunity to be independent. I'm given the opportunity to make my own choices, to do, to live my life, right? And so it holds true in school and in the home and in the workplace.
That makes me think of Plan C, where the parent is does things for them or doesn't.
No, so Plan C is where you drop an expectation because it's going to create too many problems. You're just dropping it temporarily. And so the purpose of that is, okay, so in problem solving, we think of, okay, there's Plan A approach, Plan B, and Plan C. And so you can only Plan B so many problems. So if I identify a list of like 5 or 6 problems that need to be addressed, I can really only do 1 or 2 problems at a time. So if I pick 2 others to Plan B, then the other 3 of the 5 problems can only be handled through Plan C or Plan A.
Okay, I never thought of it like that.
So those are my only 2 options. I have 3 options: Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. If I already occupied Plan B with 2 problems, then the other 3 I can only do Plan A or Plan C. And so it's all about prioritizing the problems. Which ones are the highest priority? Now, people that are starting this model, oftentimes we're picking the low-hanging fruit because kids are going to be dysregulated with this approach because they're not used to it. If I spent years, Plan A in the kid and telling them you better do this or else, then when I say, hey, let's talk about it, they're going to be like, what the heck's wrong with you? Something's up. And so they're going to be dysregulated. So I need to pick something that's, easy for them in the beginning so that they can get used to this process,
Have you seen with like Plan A, like a child that if you've worked with them or like even an adult that had a lot of Plan A parenting, do they have trouble opening up more to you?
Oh yeah. Or they're not going to be honest. They might talk, but they're not going to be really true about what's bothering them or whatever. Or they do that robotic compliance. All right, I'm just going to do it. Just get off my back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and that's basically what robotic compliance is. Just get off my back. Like it's what that quote says.
Have you ever tried to explain that to, like, if you have a kid in therapy, have you ever tried to explain that to, I don't know, like a parent, or how would you explain that to someone that is doing a bunch of plan A to say, hey, you know, your kid's not opening up because...
Yeah, so we talk about goals of the intervention. And so one of the goals would be, in any intervention we do, we would want to improve or repair or build or repair a therapeutic relationship. So we would want our relationship to be stronger through these problems. And so what I always ask is, what's your relationship like after plan A? Now, there are some sneaky plan A's. Like, not all plan A's are do it or else. Plan A could be, if you meet these expectations, you can have Reese's Peanut Butter Cups or whatever. You know, it could be enticing through reward. It could also be sitting down and listening and talking to them, but really only caring about your expectation. So how can I get you to follow this expectation more? You know, it sounds like you're being nice and supportive, but it's still plan A because you're not getting the kid's concern. What is getting in the way? What are you trying to help that kid? So,
yeah, well, I have another quote for you, Doug. I really like this one, and let me know your thoughts on this. So, children will listen to you after they feel listened to.
That reminds me of what's the 7 essential habits, the highly effective habits, Stephen Covey. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So yeah, I mean, I think anybody can kind of relate to that. Like, you know, let's just say you're at work, and you did something that your boss didn't like. Like, maybe you didn't turn your paperwork in on time, or you didn't do it. And so if your boss comes in and says, immediately jumps in about, I need you to do this, instead of going, hey, you know, I noticed that your paperwork getting in on time. Is it going on? Can you tell me more about that? Like, I want to understand what's getting in the way, versus, hey, I don't really care what your reason is. You're not getting paperwork in. If you don't get your paperwork in, you know, like, how willing are you going to be to open up?
Yeah.
You know, and tell me what's going on. Like, because basically what you're communicating is, I don't really care what you think. I just care about you meeting my expectation. And so, yeah, that shuts you down. But it's also dysregulating. So when I'm dysregulated, I'm not going to be able to access my thinking brain very well.
Well, I've thought about this too, and I've talked to my friends about this, is how much better would work relationships and work productivity be if there were more mental health awareness in workspaces? Like, if you can get someone regulated, if you can have healthy, you say relational, there's a word that you use, but relational health, if you can get your business or people that are working together to feel better, to be better regulated, that you care more about them, I mean, would you just assume that productivity would be better?
Yeah.
Rather than people just reacting to, I have a lot to do, no one cares, being upset, being dysregulated all the time. I mean, I've often thought about that if businesses were more inclined for mental health more, to increase better mental health. And
so I would look at it kind of, so we use this model. I used this years ago, and maybe there's some people from my old days in my previous job. We talked about the circle of courage. They probably, you know, are tired of hearing it from me because I talk about it ad nauseum, but it's this universal developmental need model, that we have these 4 universal needs. And then when these needs are met, we thrive. And when they're not, you know, our circle is broken. So we call it the circle of courage. And the 4 needs are belonging, mastery, independence, and generosity. And it's pretty simple at workplace. If you have a sense of belonging at your workplace, like you feel cared about, you feel accepted, you feel like your supervisor wants you to thrive and do well, and they're there for you and they're supportive and things like that, then that's a huge thing. Like, all workplaces thrive when they feel a sense of belonging.
yeah,
If you feel like the opposite of belonging, rejection, you know, things like that, you're not going to feel comfortable in the workplace.
yeah,
You also want to be good at things. So you want to have a sense of mastery. You want to be able to do the job, right? You want to be able to have the skills to meet the demands of the job.
Yeah.
And then when you have the skills of the job, you can do those things independently. You don't need like supervision all the time. You don't need your supervisor to micromanage you or do any of those things. It's because you're going to operate independently and you don't need a lot of help. And then typically people that can do the job independently are usually next in line to help others. And that's a very rewarding thing, teaching others. That's why I'm in the position I'm in, because I really liked and enjoyed helping others and teaching others the job. So so going back to your question, yes, the workplace, but I don't think it's necessarily about understanding mental health, although that is helpful. It's, can you create an environment where people's needs are met? Where they feel safe, where they feel connected, where they feel cared about, where they have the opportunity to learn the job, where they're given the opportunity to build skills, where they have the opportunity to operate independently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Doug, we got a couple more, and then we're going to talk about this week's podcast with Paris was really good. But one thing that to kind of go off of what you said is that Janice was talking about is there's so much unnecessary suffering, where there's things that can be fixed, but because we either lack the skill or we lack the knowledge to do those things, we're staying in that suffering. And so I think it's the Dalai Lama, where pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And so as far as with parents that are struggling with children, how might that be applied to that, where collaborative problem solving could come in to help families not suffer so much when they could learn skills to collaborate with people in the household?
So how many people out there, including yourself, have seen The Breakfast Club?
I've seen scenes of it.
You need to watch The Breakfast Club. It is a classic. So for those who haven't seen The Breakfast Club, there's these, like, I can't remember if it's 8 of them, but 8 kids from different walks of different blocks, different, there's the athlete, there's the really studious student, there's the outcast, there's the rebel. So the rebel is played by Judd Nelson. I'm dating myself, and they're all on Saturday detention. So the whole movie's The Breakfast Club is about them all spending Saturday detention, and their lives kind of collide. Well, of course, the rebel, Judd Nelson, is behavior problem challenging kid, and the principal is managing the Saturday detention. And so there was an issue where they're messing around because the principal's not staying in the room while they're in Saturday detention, and they close the door, and the door's not supposed to be closed. And so he comes in raring like crazy, going, "Why did somebody close the door? What's going on? And who is responsible for this?" And he's doing all this stuff, and he's just getting really angry. He's totally plan A, and he gets into this conflict over, because the Judd Nelson is just kind of making fun of him and just calling him names and everything like that. And so he goes, "You want another Saturday detention?" He goes, "I don't care." "Good, you got one. You want another?" And he's like, "I don't care." And he just kind of goes back and forth. He's like, "So," and he's just doing this like conflict cycle, power struggle, until the principal has him for 8 Saturdays. He's like, "For 8 Saturdays, you're mine. And you mess with the bull, you get the horns."
Yeah.
And then you see him turn around to walk out the room, and you see this face like drop, because guess what? He has to spend 8 Saturdays with this kid who he does not get along with. And, and so oftentimes it's like we're creating our own misery by the way we treat people and the way we handle problems, So like when we punish kids, when we take recess away from kids, we have to be the ones spending time with them. So we're making our life more miserable. But what if we can solve problems with kids and help them learn from their experience? Things become a lot better. So that's kind of like, suffering is in our hands. Pain is something that we can't control. It just happens. Those things happen. We trip and we fall. We skin our knee. We're in pain. How we deal with it? Do we add more? Do we throw? Do we keep running and skinning our knee, or do we do something to take care of ourselves?
Yeah.
And so it is what do we do? Like, number one, accepting that pain is okay and is a part of life is a huge thing. And then how we deal with it is really the next thing. So,
yeah. Well, very good. And then one question that I do want to end on for anyone, and we might put this on YouTube later as a separate clip, but let's see. Okay. And this one might be kind of a dead end, but here's a question for you that someone had asked. How do you get someone to see your point of view when they misunderstand you? I would even throw in there is this a dead end where they're consciously choosing to misunderstand you?
I would say that they're dysregulated in that moment, so you have to find the right way for them to hear what you have to say. So I always kind of say, like, how can you present your point of view in a way that they're going to be receptive to it? So, I mean, I don't know who that person is that asked that question, but, are you looking at the way you are presenting your point of view? Like, are you presenting it in a way where they're going to be open to hearing you? Maybe I would listen more to them first. I would be worried less about or focus less on them understanding you and you understanding them, because the clues to them understanding you might lie in their perception, in their concern.
Yeah.
So what's getting in the way of them understanding you?
And something else that was helpful for me, Doug, is what you've used in collaborative problem solving is the time to solve the problem is not in the midst of the problem.
Right.
Right.
Because that's when we're most likely to be dysregulated and not in a good space to handle the problem.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for joining the live stream today. We have a couple of things that I'm excited to share with everyone that's watching right now. And so one of them is we do have merch available. April is very, look here. I'm going to bring it up. The Sexual Assault Awareness Month is an annual campaign to raise public awareness about sexual assault and educate communities and individuals on how to prevent sexual violence. And so our podcast this week with Paris from the Crooked Illness, she had mentioned a couple things about her experience with that. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here. Hold on a minute, Doug. All right. So if you guys go to lifeandpurposebehaviorhealth.com, you can go to our store, and you guys are looking at it right now. So Break the Silence, Sexual Assault Awareness. You guys, we have this in many different sizes as well. And so if you guys look right here, we have Break the Silence, Embrace Your Voice. And so one of the things that I thought was very encouraging with Paris when we were talking is that she was just giving her perspective on her journey to mental health and how she's really dealt with some of those things, particularly if you guys watch how she even struggled with her mom, with telling her about certain things and how her mom responded to that. And so if you guys want to watch that, it's very powerful. But yeah, if you guys can go to lifeandpurposebehaviorhealth.com, go to the store, you guys can buy that to help spread the awareness for people going through that. And so, Doug, do you have anything to say on that?
No, it just, she is very passionate about helping the community, helping others, bringing light to issues of mental health. And oftentimes I see that a lot where people that have suffered mental health issues, that one of the ways that they heal is through their mission to help others. And that's really cool. She's a big supporter of ours. So we see a lot of support from her. So we're really appreciative of Paris and the support she gives us. And we love the stuff that she's doing. So I just want people to watch it. I just want people to watch it and, get their own take from it. And, if you watch it, I know some of them are like an hour long and that might be kind of a lot of time in someone's day, but don't be afraid to come back to it and start. I do that all the time with podcasts. I, listen to it in bits and pieces. And so, but I always, there's good conversation throughout the whole thing. And I think it was me and Janice talking with Paris via Zoom. And unfortunately for us, she was in warm, sunny Arizona, and we were stuck. I think it was probably raining or snowing that day.
Yeah, we filmed that, a month ago?
Yeah.
More than a month ago? Yeah, and so we just released it this week. And so I actually put that in the comment section below. You guys can click on that. Also, too, if it's something that you want to watch in the evening, if you kind of learn better by watching visually, and that helps stimulate you to engage more, do that. But also, if you're doing something throughout the day, if you're working, if some people like to listen to podcasts while they're doing something. So we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcast and SoundCloud. So you guys can follow the Resilient Purpose podcast on those platforms. There's also something that I put below too that you guys can click on to find us on Instagram, YouTube, and all the other platforms as well. But we just want to say thank you to everyone that has interacted today, and we're looking forward to doing more of these live streams. We really love the interaction today, learning a little bit more about collaborative problem solving and dealing with conflict. And so, yeah, again, if you guys want to message us on Instagram or follow us on YouTube, ask us questions and we'll bring it up on future live streams. Doug, do you have anything else to say for today?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I'm good. No, I just hope everybody's enjoying themselves, and yeah. Please spread the word. Mm-hmm. Share.
Yep.
Support. We like doing it, and we hope it's helpful, and we appreciate our loyal listeners.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Yeah, please like and share. And this just came into my mind, Doug. You know, by you guys liking and sharing content, and even if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and giving us a review, this helps spread the word of the things that we're talking about. And kind of the quote that we were talking about is that
thank you, Justin.
is suffering. And so we get this information out and this education out, and giving people more tools and to think differently could end suffering for a lot of people. And so by sharing this and liking this is really helpful.
So Tracy's asking, how often do we do these? So first of all, there's the film podcast, not live streams, and those go out every Monday now. That is, we have so for example, Paris was Monday. Last week it was Dennis and Tim Kraft having a conversation about spirituality and addiction. And then next week, Kaylee, who do we have next week? Hussein, where we actually talk to Hussein. So that's a good one to talk about. Hussein reached out to me after watching some of our stuff, and he has experience with suicidal thoughts and actually made an attempt on his life that didn't complete. And then just the journey from that moment on is super powerful. And so we talk about that. We also talk about how his ethnicity and religion and all that plays a role in his upbringing and kind of views of child rearing that played a role in his mental health. That was a really I enjoyed that conversation.
I loved it so much. Yeah.
And so because one of the things we've had people that have lost people to suicide, and we've talked to them about that and their experience, but now we're talking with someone who had attempted and then didn't complete. So now their journey after that, and it's a pretty interesting journey.
Yeah.
So
I'm so excited to put that one out.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we have tons of upcoming things, and
we filmed a lot.
The live streams are not on any predictable schedule. I know that's probably frustrating for people, but typically it's once a week as well, maybe two times a week, depending on how much energy we have and excitement we have. But typically there's a guaranteed weekly live stream, and we try it at different times. So today was at 4. Last week it was at 6. We've done them in first thing in the morning and at noon.
Yep. So I think kind of been seeing that the afternoons are better as far as engagement. And so again, like Dustin, Tracy, like you guys sharing this, if you follow us on YouTube under the Resilient Purpose podcast and send it to friends and family, or it's just a great way to even get people to interact, because Doug's a licensed therapist, a professional. And so to be able to come on and to type questions to ask about mental health or any advice that you have or that you want to get from him, it's just that's what I love spending time with Doug is that getting this wealth of information that he's learned over the years from experience and from education. And so by sharing this, also getting people involved to ask questions. If there's someone that could benefit from these, please share that and follow us on YouTube for all the videos.
Tracy, I don't know if you're working or where you're working or whatever, but you can just, if you're working at that time, you just tell your whole workplace to just put it on their computers, and it'll help them work
Yeah.
I promise it'll help them work.
Yeah.
So,
All right, guys. Well, you guys have a great. Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, great Tuesday
Tuesday?
evening. Yep, today's Tuesday, and beautiful weather outside. And so, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys soon.
take care. Bye.